Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Big Blue Sports here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. I'm Matt Volz, a senior here at Fredonia. First episode in 2 weeks. Last week was fun, and I say fun in the most sarcastic way possible because last week, somehow, in the calendar year 2026, somehow people still get COVID. Yes, that's a thing. I was out all of last week. Well, I came back masked up on Friday, but I was out all of last week with the lovely COVID-19. Started feeling like Garbo on Monday, and I was like, I don't know what this is about. So I went home, took my temp, had a 101.5 fever, so I said, that's not great. Took a COVID test just to rule it out, and I think that second line popped up in about 5 seconds. So that was not great. I was sidelined last week, did not have an episode of Big Blue, which was really disappointing because it would have been the first episode of Big Blue where I could have talked about and previewed a Sabres playoff matchup. And we didn't get to have it. So that's disappointing. But lots to talk about today, and I do mean lots. Of course, in Buffalo, I guess the series, I should say, in Boston then. Game 3 tonight between the Sabres and the Bruins. Series tied at a game apiece. A wild third period comeback led to a Sabres win in Game 1. Buffalo not successful in their comeback attempt in Game 2 after trailing 4-0 early in the third. They scored too late, but were not able to bring it any closer than that. Game 3 in Boston tonight at 7 o'clock. Tonight is also the first round of the NFL draft. And if I'm being completely honest, and I don't mean this as a slight towards the Bills or like the NFL or anything, this is probably the least I have ever cared about the NFL draft when it's happened. The reason for that, of course, is that the Sabres are in the playoffs. And my brain with the Sabres, I have been so focused on the Sabres in the playoffs, but I've also been focusing on the Bandits starting their playoff run because I have to for my capstone project. I have a platform. It's called Relax Lacrosse in Western New York. Covers the Bandits. It's your unofficial home for the Bandits. Check it out at laxbuffalo.com. You can also search up Relax Lacrosse. It's spelled just like the word relax on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. I still call it Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So I've been focused on the Sabres in the playoffs, obviously, because it hasn't happened in 15 years. I've been focused on the Bandits because I'm covering the Bandits as they start their playoff run this weekend. I have not, and not to mention the NBA playoffs, the Knicks are in the playoffs, so I've been focusing on that. I have honestly barely thought about the NFL draft to the point where I think it was on, what was it, Monday or Tuesday of this week, I forgot that the draft was this week. And I saw something about the draft on Thursday. I was like, that's this week? Really? Already? Wow. So yes, first round of the NFL draft tonight in Pittsburgh. Second and third rounds tomorrow night. Rounds 4 through 7 beginning on Saturday afternoon. So we'll see. The Bills are on the clock at pick number 26. We'll see if they stay at 26. We'll see what happens. Obviously, the number 1 overall pick, not likely to be a surprise. The Raiders on the clock. They are expected to take Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza. Will not be a surprise in the slightest. At least it doesn't seem like it's going to be. But the interesting thing is that, there really aren't, looking at the NFL draft, and we'll dive into all this later, as far as quarterbacks, there's definitely a gap behind. There's definitely, I would say, at least, maybe the draft won't say, but I would say that there is definitely a significant gap behind Mendoza. There's a couple of other quarterbacks who will probably go in the first round, but I think the gap between Mendoza and the others is pretty significant in talent. I think Mendoza is that much better and that much superior, and I think he's going to be a phenomenal quarterback in the NFL, and the Raiders are certainly going to be lucky to get him. But anyways, the Bandits also starting their playoff run. They are on the road in the first round of the playoffs. They're going to be heading to Georgia Saturday night. A little bit disappointing. The regular season did not end in a great way at all with an embarrassing loss at Oshawa. Not to mention Georgia sweeping their weekend series against Rochester, resulting in the Bandits being on the road to begin the playoffs. They are the number 5 seed, trying to go for a record 4th straight championship. But as always, we will start with Fredonia Sports, and we'll start with lacrosse because with a win at Buff State yesterday, the Blue Devils have locked up the number 5 seed in the SUNYAC tournament. And it was a rough start for Fredonia, down 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. But ultimately, 3 players with 2 goals each, Miley Barron, Leah Kunish, and Katie O'Brien, 2 goals each, as the Blue Devils take down Buff State 9-8 and leapfrog the Bengals for the number 5 seed. This means that Fredonia will be facing Oneonta in the first round of the SUNYAC tournament. They'll be going on the road to face Oneonta. That game is slated for Saturday. There is not a start time officially listed yet. Obviously, stay tuned to both SUNYACsports.com and FredoniaBlueDevils.com to see when that start time is announced. Buff State as the number 6 seed. They're going to be heading to New Paltz in the first round of the SUNYAC tournament, while Cortland and Oswego get the first round buys as the top 2 seeds. So women's lacrosse going back to the SUNYAC tournament. They're going on the road in the first round to face Oneonta, which should be an interesting matchup. These 2 teams played once in the regular season. It was here at the beginning of March, and Oneonta dominated that game 11-4. They beat Fredonia. So definitely some revenge on the mind of the Blue Devils. Katie O'Brien did have a hat trick in that game, only one for Miley Barron that day. But we'll see if maybe there's some revenge factor there as they face Oneonta. Again, that 4 versus 5 matchup set for Saturday. Do not have a start time for that game yet. Moving on to men's and women's track and field. The regular season closing in on its conclusion. And this weekend is the first time in a long time that Fredonia will be hosting an outdoor track and field invitational. The Blue Devil Invitational will take place on Saturday right here. The time for that not fully set yet, but definitely going to be very exciting to have. It's exciting to have track and field back here. If my memory is correct, it has been, I'm trying to remember the exact year, but it has been over a decade and a half since the last time Fredonia was able to host an outdoor track and field invitational, because the outdoor track was in such disarray. Of course, the remodeling project that's taken place over the last year plus. If you haven't gotten a chance to go out and see the new track and field facility, I highly recommend it because it looks excellent. It looks awesome. So they're going to be able to host the Blue Devil Invitational on Saturday, which is really exciting. That is actually the last regular season meet before the Blue Devils move on to the SUNYAC Championships. SUNYAC Championships will be hosted by Cortland this year, Friday, May 1st, and Saturday, May 2nd. But before we get there, of course, the Blue Devil Invitational right here on Saturday. A lot of excitement surrounding being able to host an invitational again for the first time in a very long time. Moving on to baseball, they, as per usual with baseball and softball in the spring, they've fallen victim to some postponements. They were supposed to be at home against Pitt Bradford for a doubleheader yesterday. That was postponed due to weather concerns. Last game they played on Tuesday, they were down in Erie against Penn State Barron, a 7-3 loss. It's been a rough season for baseball so far in manager Frank Jagoda's first season. Blue Devils 6-22 overall, 5-9 in conference play, which is overall in terms of the SUNYAC not too bad, but obviously the 6-22 record jumps out as being a difficult season for baseball. Blue Devils absolutely still are in the mix for a conference playoff spot. Now, again, there is a decent amount of baseball. There's a few games still left to be played. A series this weekend at Canton wraps up the regular season. They'll have a standalone game tomorrow at 3 o'clock, a doubleheader on Saturday starting at noon. Baseball team, as of right now, is sitting in 5th place in the conference. Cortland and Oswego have already locked up the top 2 spots, while New Paltz has claimed a playoff spot. So in the baseball standings, the top 4 teams, only the top 4 teams, there's only 7 in the conference for baseball, make the conference playoffs. So Cortland and Oswego have already locked up 1 and 2, respectively. New Paltz is in. Oneonta right now would be the last team in, and as of right now, Fredonia would be the last team out, with Plattsburgh and Canton behind them. As mentioned, though, Fredonia is not out of it. They need Oneonta to hit a rough patch this weekend, which is possible. It's a really, really tough weekend schedule. 3 games remain for Oneonta. They've got to play Cortland in a 3-game series this weekend. Fredonia taking on Canton, who has not won a conference game yet this season. They're 0-14 in SUNYAC play and 8-21 overall. So Fredonia, 3 games against Canton. Oneonta, 3 games against Cortland. It is very possible that the Blue Devils could, with some weekend success as well as Oneonta slipping up a little bit against Cortland, the Blue Devils could hop ahead of Oneonta and make the conference playoffs as that number 4 seed. If that happens, they would be going on the road to face Cortland in the first round, which, again, tough matchup, but at least you're in the conference playoffs, and they are in striking distance because of the way the weekend matchups fall to be able to get there. Again, standalone game tomorrow at 3 o'clock, doubleheader Saturday at noon. SUNYAC playoffs begin next Friday, May 1st. And then finally, moving on to softball, another team that is in the mix for a conference playoff spot. Nothing has been clinched yet. The Blue Devils, 11-19 overall, 5-5 in conference play. And unlike baseball, there's actually a lot of softball still left to be played. So they've got 4 games this weekend, a doubleheader at Morrisville starting at 3 o'clock tomorrow, and a doubleheader at Cortland starting at noon on Saturday. Morrisville is in last place in the SUNYAC. They're 1-9, tied with Canton in conference record. In the SUNYAC, Cortland is very good. So right now, New Paltz at 11-1 in conference play is first. And again, because there's so much softball still left to be played, nothing has been clinched. No one has locked up a spot. You've got New Paltz leading the way at 11-1. Cortland in second, they're 8-2. Oswego third, 7-3. Oneonta in fourth, they're 8-4. Then you've got a whole mix of 3 teams who are all at 500. That's Plattsburgh, Buff State, and Fredonia, who are all in that mix. And then steeply below, you have Potsdam, Canton, and Morrisville, all of whom have greatly struggled this season. Now, softball is a little bit more like some of the other sports, like lacrosse, like how hockey used to be before they expanded it, where the top 6 teams make the conference playoffs. Top 2 each get first-round buys. Right now, that would be New Paltz and Cortland getting the top 2 buys. And you would have Buff State going to Oswego, Plattsburgh going to Oneonta, Fredonia be the first team out. But again, there's a lot of softball still left to be played. So the doubleheader at Morrisville on Friday, the doubleheader at Cortland on Saturday, then 3 doubleheaders remain after that, and they're all at home. Next Wednesday, a doubleheader against Nazareth at 3 o'clock on Strikeout Cancer Day. Friday, May 1st, a doubleheader at home against Plattsburgh. That starts at 3 o'clock. And then Senior Day, a doubleheader here against Potsdam at noon next Saturday, May 2nd. And then the SUNYAC tournament begins on Thursday, May 7th. So for those of you keeping track at home, that is 10 games left on the schedule. That's why no one's clinched anything in the playoffs. Still 10 games remain, and there's a lot that could change over the course of those 10 games. So definitely stay tuned. Again, SUNYACsports.com and FredoniaBlueDevils.com are going to be your best friends for keeping track of all things Blue Devils spring sports as lacrosse starts their playoff run. Baseball hopes to get themselves into the playoffs. Softball shakes out the remaining 10 games of the regular season. And track and field gets to host their first meet in a very long time before heading into the conference playoffs. That's all for your Fredonia sports segment. Going to take a short break. When I come back, it's Bandits Talk. The Bandits, in search of their 4th straight championship, they are on the road against the Georgia Swarm this weekend. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports this afternoon on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports here on WCVF. Before we get rolling with Bandits Talk, stay tuned next weekend here on WCVF and WDVL for our semesterly Radiothon tradition. So Friday, May 1st, beginning with High Noon Friday, we will bring you 24 consecutive hours of live radio with lots of fun shows. Obviously, High Noon Friday, a Lover Call special at midnight, and so many more. It's a lot of fun to tune in, so I definitely recommend tuning into, again, both WCVF and WDVL for our semesterly Radiothon. It's going to be a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, it's playoff time for the Buffalo Bandits. However, the Bandits not at home in the first rounds. First time in several years where the Bandits have begun their playoff run on the road. But that's exactly how things shook out this year. So where we're at in the National Lacrosse League for the playoffs, the Vancouver Warriors finished the season as the league's top team at 13-5. A 3-way tie between the Colorado Mammoth, Saskatchewan Rush, and Georgia Swarm. All 3 of those teams finished at 12-6. Colorado finishing as the number 2 seed, Saskatchewan 3rd, and Georgia 4th. Then you had the Bandits and the Toronto Rock both finishing at 11-7. Buffalo has the tiebreaker, so they finish in 5th. Toronto in 6th. The last 2 teams to qualify for the playoffs, teams with losing records, the San Diego Seals and Halifax Thunderbirds, both at 8-10. They make the playoffs, beating out the Las Vegas Desert Dogs and Ottawa Black Bears, both of whom also finished 8-10. Other teams to miss the playoffs, the Calgary Roughnecks, Rochester Nighthawks, and Oshawa Firewolves at 6-12, and the soon-to-be no more Philadelphia Wings finish 5-13 and miss the playoffs. So the postseason matchups in the first round, of course, we already talked about Buffalo and Georgia. The 1-8 matchup, Vancouver hosting Halifax. Number 2 seed Colorado hosting 7 seed San Diego. Saskatchewan hosting Toronto. And Georgia hosting Buffalo. Should be interesting. Now, again, with the Bandits not being at home to start the regular season, It's a disappointing end to what was a really phenomenal run to get to where they got. There was a point in the Bandits season where they were 3-5 and appeared to be in very bad shape. The Bandits were 3-5 after a 13-11 loss to the Philadelphia Wings at home. And there were a lot of fans because of, struggles of Josh Byrne and some other players. Fans were concerned. Matt Vince didn't look like himself. It was not great. From February 14th until last Saturday, a stretch of 9 games, the Bandits went 8-1. They lost one at Vancouver on February 20th. They got the win in Halifax on Valentine's Day. After that, they rattled off 7 straight wins, including 4 wins during that stretch against teams who were in first place in the league at the time. They had an overtime win at home over the Saskatchewan Rush on February 27th. Then Colorado jumped into first, but on March 13th, the Bandits beat them 13-10 in Buffalo. On March 28th, with Saskatchewan back in first, the Bandits went to Saskatoon and took home an 8-7 win. And then the next week, returning home to face the Vancouver Warriors, who were then in first place, the Bandits obliterated the Warriors 15-5. Matt Vince had been absolutely spectacular over the course of that stretch, but last Saturday was disappointing. At Oshawa, all the Bandits needed to do to clinch a home playoff game was win. All they had to do was beat the Oshawa Firewolves, who came into play at 5-12. A very disappointing result for Buffalo as Oshawa got out to a 7-0 lead in the second quarter. 7-0. An embarrassing showing from the Bandits offense, which we've seen too many times. Finally, more than 25 minutes into the game, Joe Resiterit scored Buffalo's first goal. The Bandits did rattle off 4 straight to end the half, so they trailed 7-4 going into the third quarter, and it seemed like a little bit more manageable of a game. And then here comes Oshawa again, a shorthanded goal from Ethan Walker, immediately followed by a goal from Taggart Clark, put Oshawa ahead 9-4. The two teams split goals going towards the fourth quarter, 10-5 Oshawa heading into the fourth. Buffalo did score 2 in the fourth, including a shorthanded goal from Dane Smith to cut the deficit to 3. Ultimately was not enough as the Bandits fell 12-8 and now find themselves going on the road in the first round of the playoffs. In terms of scoring, Dane Smith leads the team in scoring, 118 points, 39 goals, 79 assists, finishing third in the league in points. Josh Byrne with a phenomenal rally to get to where he got after struggling through the first half of the season. 36 goals, 77 assists, 113 points. As both players finish in the top 5 of the league in scoring. Dane Smith third, Josh Byrne fifth. Vancouver's Keegan Ball led the league in scoring, 45 goals, 79 assists for 124 points. Ball was tied with Colorado's Andrew Q for second in the league in goals scored. Calgary's Tanner Cook took home the scoring title with 49 goals on the season. Ryan Lanchbury for the Rochester Nighthawks led the league in assists with 82. Dane Smith was third. Josh Byrne sixth. Points per game, Andrew Q led the way with 7. Q in 45 goals, 84 points. He only played 12 games. So a phenomenal season for Andrew Q. If he had played a full season, good chance he would have been possibly even ahead of Keegan Ball in scoring. So Ball looks to be a headliner for the MVP award. I think it's crazy if they don't give it to the guy who was by far and away the best goalie in the league this year, and that's Georgia's Brett Dobson, who, of course, the Bandits will go up against in the first round of the playoffs. Brett Dobson played all 18 games for Georgia, a .86 goals against average. He averaged more than a full goal per game, less than anybody else in the league. And some of those other guys had phenomenal numbers. Nick Rose for Toronto allowing about 9.2 per game. That's really good. Christian Del Bianco, 9.4. Frank Scigliano, about the same. Matt Vince and Warren Hill, both below 10 as well. Dylan Ward, right about 10. Again, solid seasons. Brett Dobson allowed less than 8 goals per game. That's incredible. Save percentage, he led the way too. Other goalies had phenomenal save percentages this season. Nick Rose, Christian Del Bianco, Warren Hill, and Nick DeMoon and Dylan Ward all finished 81% or higher. That's really good. Brett Dobson, 84.7. Stopped nearly 85% of shots. For lacrosse, that's insane. But the biggest stat that is why Brett Dobson should be the MVP is the goals saved above average. This is basically a measure of how many shots, how many saves did a goalie make that realistically would be expected to be goals, but instead he stopped them. So Christian Del Bianco for Vancouver finished in second with 19.5. That's really good. Warren Hill for Halifax, about 17.3. Also very good. So a handful around, between like 15 and 19. That's very good. For an 18-game season, that's 1 per game. That's awesome. Brett Dobson, nearly 50. 48.1 goals saved above average. Are you kidding me? That's like 2.5 per game. That's absolutely incredible. Brett Dobson put together one of the best goaltending seasons in the history of the National Lacrosse League this year. And the league has shown that goalies have won MVP. Christian Del Bianco just won it 2 years ago when he was in Calgary. Yes, Keegan Ball and Andrew Q had unbelievable seasons, but in my mind, if Brett Dobson doesn't win the league MVP, it's a travesty. But I do hope Brett Dobson loses in the first round, of course, because he's going up against the Bandits. So this weekend's playoff schedule, first round of the playoffs will begin at 10 o'clock tomorrow night as the top seed Vancouver Warriors host the number 8 seed Halifax Thunderbirds. Again, 10 o'clock on Friday. 3 games on Saturday. The Bandits at Georgia at 7:30. Again, all games can be seen on ESPN+. That's the 5 versus 4 matchup. 9 o'clock from the SaskTel Center up in Saskatchewan. The Rush hosting the Toronto Rock, the 3 versus 6 matchup at 9 p.m. And also at 9 o'clock, the number 2 seed Colorado Mammoth hosting the 7 seed San Diego Seals. Again, all of these games are available on ESPN+. You can tune in Western New York. You can tune in. I actually don't believe it has been announced yet what TV channel it's going to be on. My guess would be either the CW or MSG. But either way, the Bandits available on ESPN+, as are all of the other National Lacrosse League playoff games. So, again, Bandits looking to become the first team in NLL history to win 4 straight championships. But in order to do that, they're going to have to start that mission on the road, taking on Georgia. Going to take a short break. When I come back, it's Game 3 between the Sabres and the Bruins in Boston tonight. Buffalo trying to rebound from a 4-2 loss and retake the series lead. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports this afternoon on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Back in a few. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports here on WCVF 88.9. It is Game 3 between the Sabres and the Bruins tonight. 7 o'clock in Boston on TNT. So here's the thing. Here's the question that I think a lot of people, the number one question that people are asking: who starts in net tonight? You know, and that's honestly something that I'm not sure of. I have my idea of it. So Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen played the first 2 games of this series. Looked pretty good in game 1. Played very well. Sabres obviously came back, won it 4-3. Game 2 was not his night. It was a 1-0 game late in the second. Of course, probably everybody in Western New York has seen the Morgan Geekie goal from center ice where he just kind of, flipped the puck up in the air and it somehow took a bounce and went past him. Luukkonen gave up the 4th goal of the game. Just 16 seconds into the third period, Lindy Ruff pulled him, put Alex Lyon in for the rest of the night. So I think a lot of people have really gone back and forth on, do you say, all right, well, Luukkonen had such a terrible game, let's go with Alex Lyon? Or are people saying, well, I don't know, you don't want to destroy his confidence. If he plays and plays well, then he's going to be totally fine. Here's the thing. So what we've seen all year from Lyon and Luukkonen is there is a massive difference in consistency for the two of them. Lyon is, and there's no argument about this, Lyon is the much more consistent goaltender. With Alex Lyon, you pretty much know what you're going to get. Is Alex Lyon a particularly stellar goaltender? Maybe not, but he's very solid. He's good. With Alex Lyon, you know that it's probably going to be pretty standard. You're probably going to give up 2 or 3. You know that you're probably going to give up, I would say you're going to give up 3. Pretty much every game he plays. So you know what you're getting with that. Lyon is much more steady. It's kind of like it's almost like Lyon is kind of like more flat line trajectory, whereas UPL is very up and down. You get highs and you get lows. And the highs are great. When Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is on his game, he is fantastic. And we kind of saw that in game 1. He played very well. Luukkonen can give you better performances than Alex Lyon can. His ceiling is higher than Alex Lyon's. But his floor is lower than Alex Lyon's, and his floor is dangerously low for the playoffs. When Luukkonen is off his game, he looks terrible. And you see what we saw in game 2 with him giving up total softies and getting pulled early in the third period. Luukkonen is the type of goalie where he's going to have 1 of 2 games. He's going to have a game where he might face 35 shots and he's going to play great. He's going to let in 1 or maybe even get the shutout. He only had 1 shutout this year, so, I don't know about that. But he can have the type of game where, again, he faces 35 shots. He'll only let in 1 goal and he'll look fantastic. But he'll also give you the types of games where he'll only face 25 shots on goal and he'll give up 5. And he'll look brutal. To me, you can't risk it in the playoffs. Yes, getting top of his game, UPL, would be amazing and would put you in a position where you might only need to score 2 goals to win a game. But you could also find yourselves in a position where, like we saw on Tuesday in game 2, where he gives up a couple of just awful goals and Lindy has to pull him because he looks terrible. to me, I don't think it is worth the risk. Yes, again, Lyon may not give you the stellar performance that Luukkonen would, but I think in the playoffs, I trust Alex Lyon more than I trust Luukkonen. I trust Lyon to have a decent game, to have him just be solid. Just make the saves he needs to make and let the defense do the rest. I don't always trust Luukkonen to do that. Because, again, Luukkonen's going to make phenomenal saves that Alex Lyon might not be able to make. But Alex Lyon is also usually going to stop the ones that he should. Whereas Luukkonen, while he might make some of those great saves, he also might let in a few that are pretty weak. And I just don't think you can risk that in the playoffs. If I were Lindy Ruff, and again, I'm obviously not, if I were Lindy Ruff, I would start Alex Lyon tonight in Boston. Now, the counterpoint to that, which I also understand, is, okay, let's think of it this way. If Lindy says, hey, UPL, you had a rough game, shake it off, go out there and start tonight. If Luukkonen starts tonight and plays great, that is going to do wonders for his confidence as a goalie. To know that, all right, I can have an off night, but my coach is still going to trust me because he believes that I can go out there and shine the next night and shake it off. That can do a lot for a goalie. But again, the big question is it worth the risk? Do you trust Luukkonen to not have another game like he had on Tuesday? If you want to gamble, then, you know, I guess this is fitting with the Sabres watch party being at the Seneca Casino tonight. Push all the chips into the middle of the table. Start Luukkonen. If you're a little unsure about that, maybe you play it safer and start Alex Lyon. I will say, if you're going to take that gamble at any point during this series, tonight is your night to do it. Because you can't get eliminated tonight. Even if you lose, it's 2-1, and you're still doing all right. You obviously can't make that gamble if we get to game 5 and the series is tied and Luukkonen's been shaky. I don't think you can make that gamble. You know, or if we get to game 7, I definitely don't think you can make that gamble. Although, there is the philosophy of, is starting Lyon playing not to lose rather than playing to win? And I do understand that thought too. So again, Lindy Ruff has not publicly made a decision on who is going to start tonight, or he may have made a decision. He has not announced who is starting in net tonight, whether it be Luukkonen or Lyon. What we do know is that Game 3 tonight begins at 7 o'clock from TD Garden in Boston on TNT. Game 4 will be Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock. And, of course, with the series tied, we do know that there will be a Game 5 in Buffalo next week, Tuesday night. So buckle up, because we got a lot of hockey left to be played. We've got at least 3 more games left in this series. I would love to see Buffalo go on a run and take these games in Boston. And I'll wrap up this segment with this, because I know I got to get to the NFL draft stuff. I'll wrap up with this. Boston, in the first 2 games of the series, given how they played out, Boston showed that they have trouble holding a lead in the third period. The Sabres have been so good in third periods all season. In the first two games of this series, they've outscored Boston 6-1 across the two third periods. So my thought, again, the strategy, you can't find yourselves in a hole early. You've got to jump out. You've got to get on the board first, put Boston on their heels. I would say for these two games in Boston, if we go into the third period tied, the Sabres will win because they are a much better third period team than Boston is. If they go into the third tied, Buffalo's going to win the game. And I think that has to be the goal. Finish 40 minutes of play, either tied or you've got the lead. Because if you do that, you're probably going to win. Because Boston has shown that they are shaky. The other thing, too, Jeremy Swayman has been great, of course. But the big thing with Swayman is he's phenomenal, seems unbeatable until you get that first one by him. And then he becomes mortal. And we've seen that in games 1 and 2 where he's just looked so great through the first two periods, but then you get one by him. And then what happens? Another usually follows very shortly. So again, get him early, get on him early, pepper him with shots. You can score on the power play, and you can score in the first two periods of the game, Buffalo, by the way, in case they weren't aware of that. But you've got to jump out early. You can't bury yourselves in a hole, or else you're going to play directly into Boston's strategy. And one other thing, of course, injury updates. Lindy Ruff said that Noah Ostlund might be good to go for tonight's game. So we'll keep an eye on that, see if Ostlund plays, see if Lindy shakes up the lineup at all. Again, Game 3 starting tonight at 7 o'clock on TNT from TD Garden in Boston. Going to take a short break and then finish out the show talking about the NFL Draft. First round is tonight. The Raiders on the clock with pick number 1. The Bills picking at 26. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Back in a few. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. The NFL Draft begins tonight. Of course, the Raiders picking first overall, the Bills at 26. First round is this evening. And again, the number 1 pick does not seem like it's going to be all that much of a surprise with Fernando Mendoza going to the Raiders at number 1. Then it really kind of becomes a free-for-all. So the big question I think that is obviously on everybody's mind is what are the Bills planning to do at pick 26? Their two biggest positions of need are definitely safety and wide receiver. So as far as who's on the board, I have my idea of who I really want at 26. But again, the player who I really want usually ends up getting picked like 5 picks before the Bills and annoys me. So the player I have my eye on is Dylan Thieneman, the safety from Oregon. Again, another guy who I just think would fit in perfectly with Buffalo. Matt Miller from ESPN, his pro comparison is Malik Hooker. Again, not necessarily the biggest guy. He has okay size, 6 foot, 201 pounds. I think, again, that is by far and away, it's no question the Bills' top 2 positions of need are wide receiver and safety, which always drives me nuts when I see those mock drafts that have the Bills taking like a corner or an edge rusher or like a running back or something like that. And it's like, okay, you clearly don't watch the Bills. I think Dylan Thieneman would be a great fit in this Buffalo defense if he's gone by 26. Other players potentially to look at, looking at some of the wide receivers, My favorite wide receiver is Mekhi Lemon, but he's going to be long gone before Buffalo picks. Some other guys, of course, Jordan Tyson and Carnell Tate are going to be probably gone pretty early. One guy who I am looking at significantly is Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana. He is a little bit older, actually. I believe he's 24. So, he's one who it's possible he could go a little bit earlier in the first round. Others that I have my eye on, Casey Concepcion. I think a lot of Bills fans are really looking at him. He might be still on the board, might not be. As far as second or maybe third round receivers to look at, Skylar Bell from UConn, also from Indiana, Elijah Surratt, other players who are definitely worth a look. I would take a look at Mekhi Lemon's USC teammate, Jacoby Lane. I think he's a good receiver to look at maybe again in the second or possibly third round. On the defensive side of the ball, safety is the big one for Buffalo. Caleb Downs is going to go early. We know that. Dylan Thieneman and Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo may still be on the board. Those three are definitely of interest for me. Others that I would look at whose draft stock appears to have declined a little bit, Genesis Smith from Arizona and Kamari Ramsey from USC are other names that I would definitely keep an eye on and think the Bills absolutely could go in that direction. As far as other players, one other player who I think we should all definitely have our eye on for the late rounds is a local product, and that is Red Murdoch from UB. Again, not going to be an early pick by any stretch of the imagination. He will be, I would assume, an early day 3 pick. He could go in the third round, but I would say definitely early day 3. Could the Bills get him? I mean, they got Joe Andreessen, of course, as an undrafted free agent. We saw Sean Dolac go in the 7th round to the LA Rams 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. So a player to keep an eye on for sure. I think anybody who ends up with Red Murdoch is going to be getting a steal in the late rounds. I think Red Murdoch has the intangibles and the football IQ to be potentially a starting linebacker in this league. I think whoever takes him is going to be getting a steal. Again, draft begins later tonight, 8 o'clock tonight, with the Bills on the clock at 26. That'll do it for today's episode of Big Blue Sports. I want to thank everybody at home listening, as well as everybody here at FRS who makes this show possible. Stay tuned for Game 3 tonight, as well as the NFL Draft. Local at 1 is next with all your favorite local music hits. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you all next week. We'll see you then.